the bus lurches, tassels along the top of the windshield sway, breaking up the sun in the driver's eyes. I'm traveling 24 kilometers across the dry bed of Lake Texcoco, once almost the size of San Francisco Bay, now downtown Mexico City. I am on my way to see what remains I can find of the ancient city of Texcoco, cultural center of the Valley of Mexico 500 years ago before the Spanish conquest, and home to Nezahualcoyotl, or Hungry Coyote, ancient Mexico's greatest philosopher and lyric poet. Maya pewaloya nequiha, in Maya onquico. Friends, now let it begin. Now let there be music. Aya, oya, God has arrived. Now let there be pleasure because of these princes, your songs. In your home beyond, in Dawn's house, your flowers are stirring. They bloom as jades. They're shaken down as bracelets from the place where one knows joy, from beyond, your flowers, your many leaves. Oh God, the flowers, words of life giver, they shower down on Anahuac. With these you cause the city to endure. Your hands are the world. It is you who speak, O life giver. Ye tequatl, tonaya, tawaya, epalne, moane. The driver suddenly brakes and yells at a cyclist who gives him a finger and speeds away. Above the rearview mirror is a plea to the Virgin Mary. I wonder whether the trip across the lake was faster 500 years ago by canoe than in today's traffic snarl. A small boy bursts into passionate song about a battle of Pancho Villa. The bus is suddenly quiet. After visiting Texcoco, I will continue on a few kilometers to the small mountain of Texcotzingo, Hungry Coyote's retreat, where ruins of hilltop gardens, rock-cut baths, sculptures, and a massive aqueduct system are said to still remain. We pass briefly by reeded wetlands, the last remnants of the lake. Modern Texcoco is a small textile city, population 65,000, about half of what it was in pre-Columbian times. At the entrance to town is a tablet marking the spot where, after conquering Texcoco, Cortez launched ships against Tenochtitlan. I find no trace of the 6-mile wall that once enclosed the urban center. Little remains of the ancient city above ground, except the stones, which now make up the walls of many of the downtown buildings, including the church in the central plaza, with their designs and sculptured reliefs turned inward. I walk about the Zocalo, sit in the shade of tall cypresses, survivors of the 1,000, legend says, Hungry Coyote planted. On the feast of Corpus Christi each year, ancient dances are still performed here. Below ground, beneath the present city, I know the earlier city's foundations still stand. Nikayake, Sako, Towewe, our drums are ready. Already the eagles and jaguars dance. Already you are on your feet, flower song. I search for songs, our adornments. As a parrot, as a quechol bird, I fly above the earth, my heart drunk. I am a quetzal. I arrive at the one spirit's place of rain, beautifully over the flowers. I sing and my heart rejoices. A flood of flowers covers the earth. My heart is drunk. Pitiable, I grieve, for earth is no one's home. I wish these warriors of mine, these Mexicas, these Mexicans were not so warlike. Destroyed are the Chiltepecans, weeping the Tecuantepecans. A comet showers down upon them. Perished are the Xochitecans, weeping the Amaztecans, weeping the Tecuantepecans. The warrior chiefs destroy our books. Only songs are our adornments. Take pleasure in this. No one has a house on this earth. We have to leave the fragrant flowers. Huelic, ye, Xochitl, ayo. Wandering people called the Alcolwans arrived 1,000 years ago at this lake shore. Hunters and nomads from the desert, living in caves and wearing animal skins, the Alcolwans found here a small community of Toltecs, refugees from the great fallen city, Tula. Led by the Tlatoani, Quetzalcoatl Topiltzin, the bringer of culture, the Toltecs had paid peaceful homage to the feathered serpent who lives in the wind and asks sacrifice only of butterflies and snakes. But Tezcatlipoca, the patron of the Toltec warrior orders, grew jealous and demanded human sacrifice. A mortal struggle ensued. Tezcatlipoca banished Quetzalcoatl Topiltzin, and the great Toltec civilization of Tula fell. Bands of refugees scattered everywhere in the valley of Anahuac, or Mexico. The Alcolwans settled nearby and adopted the Toltec culture as their own, shedding their animal skins for clothing, their wandering for farming, their caves for a village, and gave up even their rough Chichimec language for the silvery tongue of ancient Tula, Nahuatl. Several generations passed. The Alcolwan village by the lake shore grew into the great city Texcoco, place of rest, where they revived Toltec learning and culture. They built in stone, developed the arts and sciences, history, hieroglyphic writing, astronomy, calendar, philosophy, sculpture, painting, music, poetry, and brought a cultural renaissance to the valley of Anahuac. A score of city-states now circled Lake Texcoco, with Nahuatl as their common tongue, all now looking to Texcoco as the cultural center of the Nahua world. On the opposite bank, another wandering people arrived, the Aztecs. They too took Nahuatl as their mother tongue and began their own city on a barren island 15 miles away, Mexico, Tenochtitlan. While the Aztecs were still struggling with survival, the Texcocans were reaching new cultural heights in the time of their seventh Tlatoani, Nezahualcoyotl, hungry coyote, lawgiver, architect, engineer, reluctant warrior, philosopher, and lyric poet. Hungry Coyote was born on the day one deer, in the year one rabbit, or April 28, 1402. His father was a Texcocan Tlatoani, or king, Ixtlilxochitl, and his mother, an Aztec princess, Matlacihuatzin. At the age of 16, in the year one rabbit, or 1418, Hungry Coyote saw his people conquered by their rivals, the Tepanecas, and witnessed his father's murder. Hungry Coyote wrote Song of the Flight while in hiding. O nen, no tlacatu, o nen, no quizalco. In vain I was born, in vain I left the house of God and came to earth. I am so wretched, I wish I'd never come to earth. But what is there to do? Do I have to live among the people? Do I have to stand on earth? You are hardly my friend here on earth, life giver. Go, princes, live in peace, pass your life in calm, while I live with my head bent down when I am among the people. How do you decide your heart, life giver? Is it true we take pleasure, we who live on earth? It isn't certain that we live, much less that we have come to enjoy ourselves on earth. We are all so filled with grief. Are bitterness and anguish the destiny of the people of earth? But do not anguish my heart. I only look for, I remember our friends. Perhaps they will come one more time. Perhaps they will return to life. Or only once do we perish? Only one time here on earth? If only our hearts did not suffer. Next to, at your side, life giver. Itlakanawak, inipal nemohua. But Hungry Coyote rallied the Alcolwans, finally defeated the Tepanekas, won back Texcoco, and was crowned Tlatoani by his people. He rebuilt the shattered city. At the very heart of Texcoco, he placed an innermost courtyard surrounded by a square of buildings housing the council chambers and halls of justice, quarters for the Tlatoani and for 400 other chiefs, scholars, artists, historians, philosophers, musicians, and poets. In a large hall nearby was the university, whose library of hieroglyphic Amashli books was the greatest on the continent, later burned when Cortez and his barbarian invaders occupied the city. Hungry Coyote devised a code of 80 laws written in blood, so comprehensive and concise that the other Nawa city-states adopted them as their own. He organized a form of government by councils. The Council of Justice, the Supreme Court of the land, had seats reserved for common citizens. The Council of Music was directed to encourage art and science. On certain days, new works of poetry and history were presented before it by their authors. In the innermost courtyard, at the very center of Texcoco, the philosopher poets debated in the dialogue of the songs. The Council of Justice awarded prizes for merit, while the willful falsification of historical truth was punishable by death. Amoshkalko Pewakwika, in the house of the paintings, the singing begins. The songs resound, scattering flowers, bringing happiness. Over the flowers, the pheasant's song unfolds. Inside the waters, red birds respond. The song scatters flowers, brings happiness. Your heart is a book of pictures you have come to sing. You make your drums resonate. You, the singer, you alone scatter intoxicating flowers. You, the singer, inside the house of spring, bring happiness. Chopankala-itek, intontea, huiltia. But with the rise of the Aztec city-state, Mexico, Tenochtitlan, came their obsession with the heart sacrifice, which spread as their ascendancy spread throughout the entire Nahua world. And even in the city of Texcoco, the city of Toltec wisdom, a temple was built to Huitzilopochtli, master of war, who demanded human sacrifice, which sickened Hungry Coyote. And he struggled with the priests of Huitzilopochtli just as 200 years earlier in the Toltec capital, Tula, the Tlatoani Quetzalcoatl Topiltzin had combated the priests of death. The way Hungry Coyote struggled was not with blood, but with music. Directly facing Huitzilopochtli's stairway to doom, Hungry Coyote had his people build another pyramid, another coup, and on its top, a tower 9 stories high, each for one of the 9 heavens. On the 9th story was a chapel filled with musical instruments to call the people to consciousness. And then a 10th story with a black roof gilded with stars on the outside, and gold, gems, and precious feathers within. This temple he dedicated to Tloque Nawake, the unknown God, the God of causes, the master of the close and the near, the Lord of the with and the by, he who invented himself, the giver of life, who is as night and as the wind. No image was allowed in this temple, only flowers and incense, and no sacrifice of blood. For this, the people called Hungry Coyote the second Quetzalcoatl. Xochitacao, Tontla, Tlaqui, Lopua. With flowers you write, giver of life. With songs you give color. With songs you give shades and tints to those who must live on earth. Soon you will destroy the order of eagles and jaguars. Only in your book of pictures do we live here on earth. Even on a precious throne, in a box of jade, princes can be found hiding. Thus are we all mortal, human, all on earth go to death. No one of emerald, no one of gold will remain. We all go away equally. All must disappear to life-giver's home. Like a painting, we are erased. Like a flower, we are dried here on earth. Like garments feathered with quetzal, zecun, and bluebird, we go away to life-giver's home. Sadness walks and wavers with those who cry in vain. Meditate on this, princes, eagles, and jaguars. Although you may be jade, although you may be gold, you too will journey to the fleshless land. We all must disappear. No one will remain. Santipo puli huishke, ayak mokahwajio. Hungry Coyote lived at a moment when the anonymous singer, Quicani, of his people's tradition, who received verses in a song quest, began to speak of personal feelings and ideas and emerged a remembered poet. His poems kept close to the rhythms and patterns of speech and were spoken, not sung, to the open hand beat of the huehuetl drum. Filled with symbol and myth, his poetry moved his people's culture so deeply that after his death, generations of poets to follow would stand by the Huehuetl and cry, "I am Nezahualcoyotl, I am Hungry Coyote," and speak his poems and keep them alive. But then barbarians from beyond the seas would butcher Nawa civilization and try to blot out every trace of his culture. And yet, forbidden their hieroglyphic writing, his people learned to write their language in alphabetic characters and collected his poems into books, and so Hungry Coyote survives. I take another bus through a plain a few miles beyond the ancient shoreline and am left off on a gravel road near a few campesino houses at the foot of the high conical hill of Texcotzingo, almost pyramidal, Hungry Coyote's retreat. I climb a steep winding path past natural grottos that cut deep into the earth. I stop a woman coming down, a cloth-covered basket on her arm, followed by a girl, her daughter. She tells me that the early Spaniards never knew about Texcotzingo. That is why it was never totally destroyed. She says today the local people come here often on pilgrimages. I continue on. I notice a beautiful black striped pebble beneath a small bush. I reach a hand in to pick it up, but as if in warning, a branch almost sticks me in the eye. I pull back and do not touch it. A black beetle walks by. I see animal droppings. A spring drips from green moss along channels chiseled into the mountain rock. The trail narrows and forks, then suddenly levels off. At a high altitude, a little below the peak, the path circles the hill. In each of the four directions are ruins of temples, statues, aqueducts. No one else is here. I climb into a large round stone bath fed by channels near a frog sculpted from the same living rock. The pool is now dry, but in this very spot, Hungry Coyote once meditated and composed. I look out over the valley of Anahuac. The huge sun is lowering. I must push on to the top. I entirely circle the peak, but I can find no trail. A sudden growl. A man steps out of a bush. He quiets his dogs and explains that he is keeper of the hill. He shows me the way to the summit. Here, according to ancient texts, were pools, fountains, and gardens, fed by aqueducts, and two streams, each spiraling down the mountain in opposite directions. At the very top was once a tower, but today there are only scattered stones and a cross. Nearby, cut into the rock, is an image I recognize as Tlaloc, master of rain. The silence is shattered by a hammering close by, but I see no one. Finally, far away in the valley, a campesino pounding a fence post into the ground, the sound of each stroke delayed beyond the image like distant lightning and thunder. Astride another boulder is the shattered statue of a huge jaguar. According to ancient texts, it once had wings, and in its open mouth was a portrait of Hungry Coyote. On the horizon, I watch clouds pass toward me over the mountain they call Tlalocan, Mount Tlaloc. In Mexico, the holiest peak of all. Above my head, a hawk rides air currents, hovering in perfect stillness, facing effortlessly into the wind. Sinits kaju, shitlai wa kimalina. Black flowers striped in gold interlace the beautiful song. With it, you adorn the people. You, singer, with a spectrum of flowers, you dress the people. Perhaps like this, the dead live now, beyond in the place of mystery. Is there perhaps pleasure there? Or is it only here on earth? With flowers, knowledge is given. With flowers, one is shown. Regale yourself with flowers. Flowers, the color of shining macaw, brilliant like the sun. With flowers of the crow, let us regale ourselves on the earth. Only a brief instant will it be thus. For a very brief time you are lent your flowers. Already they are carried to their house, to the bodiless place, which is also your house. With this knowledge, our sadness and bitterness perish. Awen amo, sanik on poliqui, intilel on tlatkolol, oaya, oaya.